You're listening to the Call Kent podcast, where Kent C. Dodds answers questions and gives insights to software engineers like you. Now, let's hear the call.
Hey Kent, it's Jan. First of all, great talk that you gave at the React Dev Day about how to migrate React router apps to using React server components. And then we had a little discussion on Twitter where I asked, hey, what really is the advantage of using React server components with React router? Brooks Librand said that the biggest thing RSC gives you is a more React-y way to do stuff. To which I replied, okay, well, the only thing that I found is that it reduces your JavaScript bundle. And then you also said that it allows you to make a component that manages loading its own data with server functions so they can handle even their own mutations. So in other words, co-location of data. But yeah, I just wanted to dig in. Are there more reasons? Are those two reasons the main reasons? Because, I mean, through the full stack server component that you popularized, right, you can already co-locate stuff. And then when you use React server components, as far as I understand it, you lose out on the ability to use React router middleware, I think. And you might lose out on things like client loaders, client actions. So yeah, I would love if you could talk about the trade-offs and in what situations would you reach for React server components when building a React router app. Thank you very much.
And that was the call. Here's what Kent had to say.
Hey, Jan. Good question. So, and thank you for the nice words. Yeah, so that's pretty much the biggest advantage in my mind. Of course, like the bundle size can be useful, especially if you're talking about a CRM or something that you are getting all of this. Like you determine what to render based off of the data that's in the database or the CRM or something. With RSC, you can do all that resolution on the server and only send the code necessary for the things that are actually rendered to the client. If you do that without RSC, then you have to either send all of the components and render the ones that are necessary based on the data, or you have to first request the data and then request the components. And so it ends up being a lot slower. So that was, I think, the original reason for RSC to be developed. But another one for that's a lot more applicable to people is that co-location, where your component can literally just await a database call and then render the result of that database call, that or fetch call or whatever, and then with server functions, the ability to handle the mutations as well. And yes, you do have the full stack component pattern that I put up on Epic Web in articles there. But the problem with that is you have to find the closest route to attach everything to. That's fine for things that happen after the initial render. So like you've got a combo box, you can have a loader right there and it works just fine. Or you have some like the post or whatever, and that can be an action on the same route. That's not a problem. But the problem gets to be like, how do you determine what that initial state of that like button should be? Is it already liked? Well, okay, that means we're going to need to have a loader, and everywhere that I render that component, I'm going to need to find the nearest route and call that loader so that I can include that in that route data so that it can be server rendered or not even server rendered, just like rendered with that initial data. So with React Router, everything is tied to the route. The route boundary is where you load data and everything. So server components eliminate this problem entirely. They, of course, do introduce other problems like where you wait until you are rendering before you can perform any of those data requests. In most cases, I think that doesn't actually matter, especially on the server render, because you are already on the server and it like rendering should happen really fast. But if you have like one component that takes a long time to request its data and then it renders its children components, and those don't depend on that data, then they didn't need to be waiting for that data in the first place. They could have been requesting that data earlier. And so now you had to start talking about doing caching and preloading. And so it can get kind of complicated. But if we're just talking purely from the developer experience perspective and the simpler use cases, which account for the vast majority of use cases, then RSCs are really, really nice for being able to co-locate data and the UI that requires that data. So I was actually just today looking into adding RSC support for the Epic Workshop app because I'm looking into improving the onboarding experience, and I wanted to be able to make a reusable kind of like tour component or onboarding component that manages like it's determining whether it has already shown the user this onboarding experience by itself, and then updating that value in the database by itself. Unfortunately, React Router is still experimental, and I think I ran into something with that today. So we won't be able to get to that today. But my point is that I think that this capability is something that I do want. And so like literally looking into adding something for it today. So just a couple of thoughts there. I hope that's helpful to you. There are definitely trade-offs associated with this. You mentioned middleware. I actually haven't used middleware yet. And so I can't speak to that, but I'm guessing you're correct. That does make sense that middleware wouldn't work in this context. And that is unfortunate, especially if I was using middleware for things like auth and stuff like that, then you're going to have to find other ways to do it. The fact that it's being more React-y, I think, I suppose is good, being that it is a React framework. The fewer concepts that you have to use that are outside of React itself, the better if you're going to be using a React framework. But they do have to actually make things better. An example of this is React has the ability to hoist title and meta tags automatically into the head for you. But when we're talking about nested routing, you end up with duplicate title tags, and that is unspecified behavior. So you don't really know what's going to happen, what the browser is going to do with that, which is unfortunate. And so the solution is to not use those features and instead use the React router meta export, which is kind of too bad. I would like to be able to just embrace all of the first class React features, but pragmatism always wins. That's one of the Epic programming principles. So it could be that RSCs are kind of relegated to a very specific subset of problems, and I think that is probably okay. So anyway, I hope that helps with your questions. Thanks for thanks for asking the question, and I hope you have a really nice day.
This has been the Call Kent podcast. Learn more about Kent at kentcdodds.com and get your own questions answered at kentcdodds.com/calls.